Hello and welcome to this video about how we can use Specmatic MCP server with coding agents such as Claude. What I have here is an OpenAPI specification with a couple of operations to get and create products. What can we do with this? So let me quickly launch my Claude. And I already have a few MCP servers running, and Specmatic is exposing contract testing, resiliency testing, and ability to run mock servers via this MCP. So now let me say start a mock server using products API.yaml, which is basically the file that is sitting right here with Specmatic MCP. And you'll notice that the Claude Code will now talk to Specmatic MCP and it will start a mock server. And there we go. The mock server is running. Can we say list all mock servers? And it will again talk to Specmatic and it will figure out that the server is indeed running and it's running on port 9000 with that particular process ID and whatnot. So just to verify that the mock server is running, what I'm going to do is, can you generate a curl request using to get all products based on products API.yaml and run it against the mock server running on port 9000. Again, you don't need to go into these details also. Most of the time, the coding agents will be able to figure out the details. And here, as you can see, the request was made and the mock server returned the response. And yeah, it's trying to figure out a couple of things just to make sure things are working. And all of that worked. So now what you can also do is, since I have a mock server, can I run test against it? Let's try. Can you run products API as a contract test against the mock server using Specmatic MCP and summarize the results? So again, trying to run a loop test here just to demonstrate the capability that you can quickly take an API specification, start a mock server, and likewise, you can take the API specification and run it against any application to see if the application is meeting your API spec or not. Again, so that's a quick demo of being able to run both a mock server and a contract test practically within no time based on your API specification using Specmatic MCP. Now, let me stop all mock servers and let's do something more interesting. What I'd like to do is take this one API specification and basis that build out an application which has a front end and a backend, so which is governed by the products API.yaml. So to begin with, what I would want to do is build a front end application without the backend by mocking out the backend using Specmatic mock server. Likewise, independently build a backend by using Specmatic contract test and resiliency test basis the OpenAPI specification without having to test it, integration test it with the front end. And once these two pieces have been built independently, then I would like to put both of them together and test them. So that's the instruction I already have in my Claude Markdown files, which I have in this project. And as you can see, this project does not have any code at the moment. So let me quickly go into Claude again. And this time around, I'll say build the application, but I will put it into plan mode so that we can get a sense of what Claude is going to do. And then I'll sort of live comment on what is going to happen as the application proceeds to build itself. For this demo, I'm using Claude Code as a coding agent, but then again, you can use any tool of your choice like Codex CLI or your Copilot for that matter. Really doesn't matter. Specmatic MCP is just an MCP and you can add it to any tool. And what I've also done here is I've used Playwright MCP as another tool for testing the front end itself. So here's the plan. It is a three-phase plan that Claude has come up with. Initially, it's going to build the backend. And what it's going to do for that is use Specmatic MCP as a guardrail to make sure that the API implementation is not drifting from the API specification. So I've already given it certain criteria such as resiliency tests must pass in order for Claude to consider that the backend has been successfully built. Likewise, when it comes to front end, it can build the front end, but it doesn't have to depend on a backend application running anywhere. It can just start a mock server using Specmatic mock. And once it's built, obviously it can use Playwright as a way to do UI testing of the application and confirm that the app is indeed working. And once both of these are done, front end and back end, we go into phase 3, which is integration testing, where we stop all mock servers and have the real front end talk to the real backend, and again run the Playwright MCP based UI automation testing to make sure that the front end and backend are fully done. Sounds a little interesting, right? Which is basically all we have is an OpenAPI specification, and we're going to build an entire app, front end and back end, just by using Specmatic as a guardrail. So let me kick it off. As things happen, I will again give you a live commentary on what is going on. Again, this is a non-deterministic process, right? Because I do not know how Claude Code is going to proceed here. Each time it might take a different route. But at least what I have here is I have the guardrails in place. I know that the application that will be built will not drift from the API specification. And again, we do not have the ability to review the code at the pace at which AI can generate the code. But what we can certainly do is make sure AI has all the tools and guardrails in place to make sure that the code it is generating is at least meeting the basic acceptance criteria. And in this case, we're using the OpenAPI specification itself as the acceptance criteria to drive the development of this application. So again, I have given it a bunch of permissions to Claude within this workspace. So it's completely hands-free. I have not been asked for any, like, should I do this, should I do that? Because I can trust Claude within this confines of this project to build the front end, back end, and I have instructions for how to build a controller, etc. So basis that it's building it, and now it's running the contract test for the backend. It started the backend, it's running the contract test to make sure that the application is indeed according to the spec or not. So server's running, the contract tests are going to be run, and the test passed. That's great. That's only the contract test though. What we want to do is resiliency tests. Again, if you're familiar with Specmatic, with resiliency tests, we also do boundary condition testing, which is again a great tool if you are using Specmatic as a guardrail for your LLMs or AI to build the application here. So here, again, the coding agent is trying to run the resiliency tests. Brilliant. Both contract and resiliency tests are passed, which means your input validations are all in place. Now we are going into phase 2, which is building the front end React application itself. So first it's going to do the standard create React app, whatnot, that it needs to do inside the front end folder. And then it will build out the app, put in all the necessary HTML, style sheeting and whatnot, and eventually has to launch the app. That's how it knows, right? It can take screenshots using Playwright and figure out if the application is running. Instead of having to rely on a real backend, which might be a little flaky or slow to respond. If you give Claude Code a tool like Specmatic with which it can quickly spin up a mock server in no time, then it doesn't have to struggle. It can just launch the application. It can take screenshots. It can play around with it how much ever it wants without the risk of corrupting any data, even be it a dev environment or a staging environment. It's completely local. The Specmatic MCP server is running on my Docker. And just to show you the logs here, so all of which happened, like the mocks, tests, everything is happening here. So we've just given the necessary tools to Claude Code, and that creates all the more power for it to be moving forward. So there you go. The front end is being built. Again, you might be wondering that you could also use sub-agents here, which is again a very, very useful idea. Because this is a small project, or rather a demo, which I'm showing you, which is reasonably complex. I have just left it to, one single Claude Code agent to do the entire building of front end, back end, etc. But what I typically would do in a larger project is I would create a contract testing agent, which is the user of Specmatic MCP. Likewise, I would have a Playwright agent, or rather a UI testing agent, which is the expert on that. And I would have one expert building the backend, one expert building the front end. So that way, we can manage the context size for each of these agents, sub-agents which are running. So there you go. The front end is already up and running. So now it is going to do the testing itself. And that's going on right now. And yeah, it's pretty much done. It's just asking me for one permission with Playwright. I think it needs that, which I have given it. There you go. The tests are in progress against our mock server. The values on the right-hand side, obviously, if you're familiar with Specmatic, you would know because these are schema compliant responses which the Specmatic mock server is giving, or it's basis the examples that are there in the OpenAPI specification, which is being used as the mock data itself. So now with that, we don't need the mock server anymore. The front end has been fully built. We've stopped the mock server. We are going into phase 3 now. So phase 3 is integration testing. We are reconfiguring the front end to now talk to the real backend instead of the dummy backend, which was the Specmatic mock server. So that's the change you're seeing. Again, the application is fully running. Now what you see is this guy going into an end-to-end integration testing with Playwright MCP. Let's get that started. And then again, the beauty of it is you notice the front end was built independently, backend was built independently, but now we have put them both together and you don't see any surprises whatsoever. This is classic contract-driven development if you're familiar with Specmatic and you've been following. But that's the guarantee that you can also get with coding agents such as Claude Code. And it's all the more important because of the speed at which you're building applications. Here, I'm just doing a front end and back end. But if you were building an entire sequence of front end, back end for front end, domain services, orchestrators, and all the other pieces, you will need the ability to build such applications fully. So there we go. That's a demo of completely hands-free Claude Code base using Specmatic MCP server as a guardrail to build out an application, first backend independently, then front-end independently, then integration testing them without any glitches whatsoever. Practically, we just built out the application in under 10 minutes. That's a quick recap.